Hi, my name is Pei Pei Un, and I am a registered psychotherapist and the founder of Speak with Joy, a psychological services dedicated to supporting children with selective mutism. Today, in this video, I have a very special guest. Her name is Madeleine Shulman. She is an adult who has overcome selective mutism when she was young, and she will be giving us her personal account of what her experience was like when she was young and during therapy and what happened after therapy. And my relationship with Madeleine went back 14 years ago. She was actually a client of mine when she was 11 years old. And I was a therapist working in the Montreal Children's Hospital at that time. We worked together, and after the therapy, she started to speak in school and her elementary school just before her high school. 2 months ago, I reconnected with her after 14 years. And I just had the pleasure of hearing her story of how her life has really evolved since she ended therapy with me. So today, I'm so glad to have her here sharing her story about how things has been like for her since then. Madeleine, to you.
So thank you for having me, Pepe. My name is Madeleine. I'm a young adult living in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. And I'm here to talk about my story and how I overcame SM thanks to Pepe's help. And I'm excited to answer the questions that you have. And hopefully this can help anyone who is in a similar situation or a parent who has a child in this situation.
You know, Madeleine, I just feel like before I jump into those questions, I think maybe we can share with the viewers what happened, like how things feel so synchronized when being connected with each other.
So on my end, such a crazy coincidence, but I was watching a TV show with my boyfriend, and in the show, a character pulled out a puppet and it was using the puppet to express his emotions because he didn't want to say how he actually felt, so he was using the puppet to act it out. And I told my boyfriend, I said, that's so funny. That's kind of what I went through when I was a kid in therapy. I used puppets and I used all these games, and it was with this therapist called Pepe. And it was such a great experience and an interesting way to go through therapy. And I thought, hey, I wonder how Pepe's doing. And then next thing you know, I get a message from Pepe. The universe has aligned. They wanted us to reconnect. And that's how we got in touch again.
Yeah. So thanks again, Madeleine, for your time.
My pleasure.
So I guess the first question I will ask is, can you share your early memory of not speaking in school?
Yeah, for sure. So at home, I was a really chatty kid. I was always the entertainer, putting on shows for my family, dancing and just being pretty crazy. But outside of my home, so outside at the park, at a store, or specifically in school, I just didn't speak. And that's for as long as I could remember, really, as early as daycare, and then throughout kindergarten and elementary school. So I think in pre-kindergarten, I think I spoke to one friend in the school that I was in, but I didn't speak to the teachers or the other students in my class. But I remember being a very social kid, even though I didn't speak. I had a lot of friends and I had a somewhat pleasant, school experience, I could say. So that's my earliest memory of not speaking.
Yes, I remember. Yes, you actually have a lot of great friends and develop good friendship even though you were not speaking. And I'm curious, how did that come about? I wonder what kind of support that your parents have given you to allow that friendship to flourish, to develop, even though you were not speaking. Can you share a bit more?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I always had a lot of friends in school. I had throughout every stage of school, from pre-K to elementary school, I had different little friend groups and very close friends too. I think these friendships developed pretty normally, I would say, like in school, in class, a friend that I would get along with, and that person became my buddy, and I would interact with them. I would have play dates with them. I would see them after school. But this was a bit different than other kids, maybe, because I would have to ask my mom to call their mom to organize a play date. When I was younger, I think this was pretty normal because kids don't pick up the phone and call their friends themselves. It's usually the parents who take care of organizing play dates. So that was pretty regular, I would say. But then as I got older, I still wasn't picking up the phone and calling friends. It was still my parents that would help in this setting up times and places to go hang out with friends. So this was my experience. I think it was the exact same as any other kid. I have two sisters who had the same experiences of having sleepovers and going to their friends' houses, going to birthday parties. And my experience wasn't any different. My parents maybe had to give a little special attention or a little bit of extra time to, handle these communications for me, but I still had the same chances of being with friends and having after school activities. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So just to give it a little bit of put things into context, actually, Madeleine, you were not speaking until grade 5, right?
Correct.
And that was when we worked together in the therapy. Now, before Madeleine spoke in grade 5, she was able to develop and maintain all these friendships, and it was actually quite remarkable. And I think like what Madeleine said just now, like the parents did put in effort to help her arrange play dates. And would you say that your parents actually did not see you as a different kid? They just, even though you didn't speak, they still treated you as a normal kid, like a normal kid who needs play dates, a normal kid who needs to go for a sleepover, go, but we will help you arrange. Yeah.
Exactly. They didn't, I don't think they felt that because I didn't speak as a child, I couldn't see friends. They in fact, they encouraged it, but they did, they did tell me that if I'm going with friends for a sleepover and if there's any problem that I need to go grab the phone and call them. Like they made things like that very clear just for safety reasons, but they didn't prevent me from having these outings,
That's amazing. And when you were having sleepover and hanging out with your friends during those play days, were you speaking in their home or no?
No, I still wasn't speaking. I don't think, aside from that friend in pre-K, as of kindergarten and grade 1, there was no friend that I actually started speaking to, even outside of school. So I would, be at their house and I wouldn't talk to their parents or their siblings or them, but I would find ways to communicate non-verbally, I guess we can say. So
that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. So can you tell more about how did you communicate with your friends, even when you were not speaking?
Yeah, so the nonverbal communication techniques that I developed, I guess, were maybe a lot of miming, even mouthing words, and then writing little notes and things like that. There was always a way to communicate. I think I got pretty creative with how I could express myself. And I was never pressured by these friends, like even friends whose houses I would sleep over at, like when I was there, they wouldn't force me to talk. They would never put me in a situation where they pressured me, right? At that point in our friendship, they'd already accepted that I didn't talk. It was more, new kids that I met that might be like, why aren't you talking? They'd ask me a million times, but the friends that I had, never put pressure or anything. So I continued to just non-verbally communicate with them. And that seemed to work out just fine. And everyone was okay with it.
And would you say that you also, in a way, chose your friends? Like you chose the friends that who will accept you and who will let you be who you are and not feeling pressure at all to speak?
Yeah, I think as a kid who wasn't talking, I had a lot of chances to observe people around me and behavior. And I had a pretty good way of like picking friends, I guess, because I was careful to surround myself with people who were good and kind and who would be nice to me, right? I think not speaking as a child and being more of the listener and the observer made me a very good judge of character, made me someone very empathetic, and I have a pretty high level of emotional intelligence because I'm able to understand my own emotions and others' emotions. I guess maybe because I had that step back of not talking. So that was interesting. I think to this day, I still surround myself with really good people. Yeah.
Wow. What you say there is just a very good insight to all of us. Were you ever teased or bullied by any friends in school?
Yeah, good question. I think a lot of people might think or might assume right away that, being a kid not talking in a big school, I would have been bullied, but I surprisingly really wasn't. I think I had a good like support system around me in school with like educators and teachers that were aware of my situation. And most of the students in my classroom and like that were in my grade sort of just accepted the fact that I didn't talk. And of course I was teased. Like, I mean, I wasn't bullied, but I was definitely teased by especially those little boys who'd be like, you don't have a tongue, you can't speak, how come you're not speaking? And they would ask me millions of questions and I would just ignore them because even at the young age of whatever age I was in elementary school, like even at that age, I just knew that like these people are being silly. I don't need to talk to them. I don't need to answer to these stupidities, let's just say. And I kind of just, didn't let it bother me. I would just move on, and that was it. That was the occasional teasing. And even later on in life, when I reconnected with some of these guys from elementary school, later on in high school in my life, they'd come to me and be like, whoa, you're talking, but tell me one question. I have one question for you. Why didn't you talk then? And I'd be like, I don't know. I didn't know why I wasn't talking, and you don't know either. So let's just leave it at that. And it kind of just became like an anecdote of like, okay, haha, good times. But that was it. I was just teased a little bit. That's all. Yeah.
But it was awesome. It's just like, even though these boys tease you, you can just kind of like, oh, let it pass. It's like in you, inside you, you know that you have a tongue, you can speak. And so it's like your self-image is very healthy and very strong at the time, that you were not affected by this teasing.
I think that confidence developed very young, and it transcended throughout my teenage years and my adult life too. I think I became pretty self-assured and confident at a young age, because I had to like put up with the silly teasing, but also I had to accept this is who I am at that time. I wasn't talking, and that's what I'm doing. Too bad.
Yeah. And would you say what would you say helped to contribute to that self-confidence early in age? Would you say because you were already surrounded with good friends, so you were not bothered? You or your parents, the way they see you, the way they tell you who you are, also contributed to this healthy self-confidence that are not affected by the teasing. Can you say a bit more about that?
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure this is early development of, my parents towards me, like treating me as a normal kid, like my sisters, not making me feel different because I wasn't talking. Yes, I was different, but they didn't, make it a big deal, right? It was just, it is what it is. And I think that helped with my self-confidence and stuff. And then having good friends too, that definitely helped. And I think I just developed that resilience within myself, and it seemed to be okay for me. Yeah.
Were there times that when you were teased or have a little bit of a difficult experience that your friends were there to protect you?
Definitely. Yeah. If I'd be with my friends and some kid would come up and be like, you're not talking because you don't have a tongue, they'd be like, she obviously has a tongue, or like they would stick up for me for sure. But at the same time, I would just ignore them, or like stick out my tongue, be like, yes, I have a tongue. Yes, I can speak. Or just roll my eyes and ignore them, that's...
right just roll your eyes and say like, it's not my problem.
Yeah.
That was a very good attitude to have, to say that I don't have a problem, right? I mean, yes, I'm not speaking yet, but hey, I can still be like a normal kid. And I think that could be a very positive reminder to other kids, other parents, and also other kids who are still learning to speak more in school. And if they ever get teased in school right now, just remember, no, I do speak, and I'm very eloquent, and I'm very articulate at home. I just need my time to practice speaking in school. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. You were able to develop those friends and have those friends around you. That also means that you do have good social skills, right?
Yes.
I mean, can you say a bit more about that? Like, I mean, what helped you to develop and maintain those good friendships throughout those years before you spoke?
Yeah, I guess I guess the friends that I had when I was younger and not speaking were just all around good people, but at the same time, like I was maybe probably the best listener ever because I wasn't speaking, right? So I was there for my friends. I could listen to them, and I could still interact and still have fun, right? So that probably contributed to my ability to be a social person. I like people. I'm my happiest when I'm around people. So I think that's just part of me, and it was part of me when I wasn't speaking, and that just translates to how I am now as an adult. And I enjoy social interactions. I enjoy networking. I enjoy meeting new people, and that's just my personality, I guess.
I see. Wonderful. I'm curious. Like you mentioned just now, we mentioned that your parents were very supportive of you. I mean, how do they relate to you in terms of you not speaking?
Well, generally from like what I can remember, I think when they first realized that I wasn't speaking normally, or I wasn't speaking in school or in public places, I started to see doctors and therapists like at a pretty young age. I don't really remember when it started, but I remember it always being part of my childhood to meet a new doctor or a therapist and sort of try to understand what was going on, I guess. So I think at first there was a bit of maybe confusion and like, okay, what's happening? And then other than that, it didn't really affect the way my parents treated me at all. It wasn't like, they never pressured me to start talking right away. They never gave me like an ultimatum, like if you don't start talking tomorrow, it's over. Like it was never like that. It was always a very slow process, I think. That's with my parents and with school and with therapists and everything. So it was always a long process that wasn't rushed or anything. And that was definitely helpful, I would say. Yeah.
And when they brought you to see therapists or doctor, how did they explain to you? I mean, were you willing to go? And I'm just curious, what did they say to you that make you willing to go?
Yeah, I mean, I never fought back against going to a doctor or a therapist, because I think within myself too, I was wondering, okay, well, not what's wrong with me, but why am I different? Like what's going on? I think I was just as curious as they were, honestly. And it was the only times that I didn't really like it was when I had to be pulled out of school early to go to therapists. And I felt like it was a little obvious that I was going somewhere every Wednesday at like 2 p.m. or something. But other than that, it was just sitting in a doctor's office with a doctor telling me most of the time that it's anxiety related. But essentially, the one thing I remember was it boiling down to just being my basic brain chemistry, and that's just how I was wired as a kid, and that's just the reason why I didn't talk. And I kind of understood that as like, okay, well, this is just how I am. But at the same time, I'm seeing all these doctors and therapists because there's probably a way to fix it. So I think the idea of seeing therapists and all wasn't a bad experience. I think it kind of gave me hope that like I'll be a normal kid one day too and just talk.
So cool. It's like on one end, your parents didn't really pressure you to talk, but they are also doing the right thing, like looking for help, looking for as much as they could during those times.
Even though I couldn't really understand what it was, I think they were understanding the situation. Yeah.
Right. And then and it was overall still a positive experience for you, even though for a few years you were looking for, you went to see doctor, you went to see therapists. Talking about school, I'm just curious about whether not speaking in school affect your learning in the classroom. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, I definitely think that there was no issue with my learning, even though I didn't speak in school. I think every year when I had a new teacher, they were aware of my situation. I think my mother would probably speak to the teacher before the school year started and say, okay, this is the situation, my daughter doesn't talk. So the teacher knew, and it was never a problem in the classroom. I still was able to learn and do my assignments and my homework and everything as normal. The only difference was when it came to oral presentations. So in school, whether it be in French class or English class, to present and to do a presentation from the class, I didn't do those. But as I got older, we found more creative ways to show the teacher that I have oral presentation skills and that I can speak. So we would record VHS tapes. That shows my age. It was not a DVD, it was a VHS. So we would record presentations and I would hand those off to the teacher, and that's how they would grade me. And if we didn't do it that way, and if they didn't grade me, I would just have like a no note in that part of my report card. I don't know how to explain it, but just like they would skip that basically for me.
I see.
So that was my experience in school. The teachers I had really good teachers who were all very patient and understanding. My only fear, I think, was when there was a substitute teacher. If my teacher wasn't there and there was a replacement, I would be worried that they didn't know. I would always think, I hope they told the sub that like I don't speak, just so they don't call me out in class. And if they did, the students around me, like my peers, would just be like, no, she doesn't talk, she won't answer. And I'd be like, okay, this is under control. But that was my experience in school. Yeah.
So in a way, like you were already in a school environment that was quite very comfortable. Like everyone knows that you do not talk. They will speak on your behalf. They're very accepting of it. They will speak on your behalf. You were surrounded by a group of good friends. And your teacher, sounds like your teacher played a very big role in making sure that you have a positive experience.
Yeah, and that I could learn and do the activities like every other kid. I think like, I actually remember an example, and I think it was in the 3rd grade, we would do these math tests where we'd compete, like there'd be 2 lines in the classroom and each kid would have to answer whatever it was, 2 + 2. I don't know what level it was at, but if I'd be standing in that line, obviously I wouldn't verbally answer the question. So I thought, okay, I can't do this activity. But my teacher said, no, you can still do it. We'll just give you a little board and you'll write the answer instead of saying it. So that was just an example of a teacher being very creative and just adapting the activity to my needs.
Very flexible, just making sure that you will still have a very normal learning experience like everyone else.
And this is in the mainstream classes. I wasn't in a special needs class.
And I mean, some parents will say, how did you get those kind, creative, and good teachers that are just right for you? I mean, did they just happen, or how did that happen? Can you say?
I think my mom was definitely involved. My mom was a teacher and works in education. So I think she, before the school year started, if there was a selection of like 5 different grades, 5 different teachers for that grade, let's say, she'd make sure that the teacher that I was put into, or the classroom that I was put into, had the best teacher, or the teacher who would be the most flexible and understanding, I think.
I think one day we probably like to interview your mom and to look at, what are some of the preparation work she did, to help ensure that you have a very normal and positive learning experience in school. It looks like she has actually done a lot of background work to really speak to the school, to really make sure that she gets the right, like a good fit teacher for you. So that even though you're still not speaking yet, but at least there's no anxiety when you go to school and you can still learn. Any maybe overall, it sounds like a very positive experience. Any maybe unpleasant experience in school you could think of?
Yeah, well, the example of the substitute teacher was one. So that's like, it would be just a general feeling of anxiety. If I got to class and it wasn't my regular teacher, I'd be like very nervous as to what would happen, as I mentioned before. But other than that, when we did my oral presentations on VHS, that was just, a technique that we developed. So I had recorded a presentation and given it to my teacher. And the next day, I believe I was absent from school. And I went back to school the following day, and I realized that the kids in my class had seen the video. They had seen the VHS. I wasn't aware that was going to happen. I didn't know that was the plan. I don't know if it was planned or if the teacher just went out and said, okay, let me just play this in front of the classroom. So I was a bit uneasy with that, because I thought, okay, that wasn't what I agreed to. I filmed this video for my teacher, not for the entire classroom. And then I come to school the next day and every kid's like, we heard you talk. And I was like, okay. Initially it was upsetting, I would say. And I felt a bit betrayed, but then after I realized, okay, whatever, now they know I can talk and they'll just move on with their lives, and it was fine. It ended up being an okay experience. And I think in that little story, the main part was that I kind of wasn't in the loop. And I guess I was, even when I was a kid. I like to be in the loop. I like to know what's going on. I'm maybe more of the of that type of person where I like to just know what's going on around me.
What's going on?
So that's the only reason why I was upset.
Yeah. And I think this is a good point too. It just helps us to know that when we do any intervention in school, it'll be good to have the kids to be in the loop, to know what is to be expected.
Yeah, I think that's very important. Like, consent throughout the whole process is essential, because I have to agree to these things. I have to agree to the steps that we're taking. I was always afraid that things would be happening behind my back. So
I think that's very important, that the kids have to know what kind of what I am going into. If there is certain plan for the kid to speak to the teacher, to speak to the friends, the kid needs to know what is going to happen, what are the steps that's going to happen. Then once they know, they feel that they're in the loop, they're in control, and then they will be more willing to do more and more steps in future. It's just one helpful note for parents to know. You met me when you were in grade 5, and I'm just curious, up to grade 5 till then, what did you feel inside? Did you feel like you want to talk? Did you feel like you're motivated to want to start talking one day? I'm just curious about your internal motivation at that time.
Yeah, for sure. I think up until I met you, maybe just before we started working together, I started to think, okay, well, this is getting old. Maybe I would like to talk at some point. I think I always, like, up until I met you, I always felt like I can't start talking now because it'll just be weird. I haven't been talking this whole time. I can't just suddenly start talking. Everyone's going to notice. Everyone's going to make a big deal out of it. That was like my biggest fear, was like the big deal. I'm not shy to like attention and stuff. Like I don't mind attention, but I didn't like the idea of it being like all about the fact that I didn't talk and now I'm talking. So I didn't want that at all. So that's why I thought, I can't start talking now out of nowhere. That's just bizarre. So I didn't do that. But I did feel like, okay, I mean, I'm getting older. I'm going to have to talk when I go to high school, mostly because of all the movies and TV shows I was watching. I realized like, okay, high school is like a whole new life. I'm going to have to, if I want to have a, friends and a social life, and if I want to go out and do things, like I'm going to have to talk at some point. So that was maybe like the beginning of that internal motivation. So that's, I guess that's how that started. And then the closer I got to the 5th grade, the more I started feeling that more often. I think at first I would kind of think it and then just brush it off, but then it kind of stuck with me a little bit longer.
Yeah. And then what were you thinking would be the way to help you speak? Like, you wanted to speak, right? But in your mind, it's like, what do you think how that will happen?
I don't really remember like having strategies to like start talking, because I never really planned for that. I never thought I would do it. But I did think like, oh, if I were to like move towns and live in a completely different country, then obviously I could talk because no one will know me. They won't know that I never spoke before. So that was like a little bit of like a fantasy of like, okay, how I could start talking. But then that kind of translated to changing schools. Moving from elementary school to high school, I thought, okay, there's going to be a lot more people that I don't know. There'll probably be a few kids from my elementary school that knew that I didn't speak, but most of them won't know who I am. So maybe that's a good opportunity. That kind of felt like, running away and changing towns. Okay, changing schools, that could maybe help. And that just happened to be because it was closer to the time where I was beginning 6th grade and moving on to high school here in Quebec, or I don't know what it is like anywhere else, but here after the 6th grade, you move on to high school in 7th grade. So that little break in between my education, like, could have felt like the right time to start talking. Yeah.
I see. And again, you brought up a good point, because a lot of kids actually think that, just if I go to a new environment, I will start to speak. And sometimes when we were trying to encourage them to practice speaking, we actually will, if possible, or if it's appropriate, we will have to encourage the kids to speak to a new environment, like an adult in a new environment. Not that we will change school, they will still be in the same school, but they will start practicing with people they do not know in a grocery store or in a new class or new activity class. And once they gain that confidence, then they will slowly move on to the people they already know. So that could be also a systematic strategy, because of this thinking that, people don't, this familiar people have not heard me talking, it's weird for me to speak to them now. This is a very common thought that we have heard from children with selective mutism. So starting with the new people can be actually a strategy. Yeah. Okay. You know what? I mean, you have given us so much insight into what it was like to be a kid who did not speak in school. And of course, every child has different experience, and your experience speak to someone who have good friendship. Parents have done a lot to help you develop good friendship, and how this friendship kind of like provide this protective bubble to give you a very good positive experience. In our next video, we definitely want to look at the next stage, which is how you have grown during the therapy, and then what happened after the therapy.
Thank you. I enjoyed the experience, and I look forward to answering more questions and diving deeper into the experience and the therapy that I had with you. Yeah.
Wonderful. See you guys in the next video.
See ya.